Hi, welcome to the It's Time for Breakthrough podcast, where we dive into topics on freedom and inner healing, all from the perspective of staying connected to yourself, to others, and to the Lord, and knowing that right here, right now, it really is time for breakthrough. I'm your host, Casalee, and let's jump right in. Hi guys, welcome back to the It's Time for Breakthrough podcast. Today I am with Jason Vallotton. This is super fun. We get to dive into a topic I'm sure some of you, if you know Jason, you've heard him talk about at least a little bit. We'll get to dive into processing pain and what that looks like every day. And so, Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
I am so excited that you're here. Jason is a pastor and a senior leader here at Bethel Church and a husband, father, friend of Jesus, first and foremost. And Jay, do you want to talk about some of the things you do, things that, where do we know Jason Vallotton from?
Yeah, so I help to oversee the Transformation Center here.
Yeah.
And then I lead our men's ministry here at Bethel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I am a dad, so I've got 5 kids. And I also lead a men's ministry called Braveco.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are all the things I do.
All the things you do, just very easily.
Yeah.
Just know you have all the time in the world to do everything you want.
I've got little kids, so I don't have much time.
Yeah. What are some of your hobbies? What do you do for fun?
Yeah, I love hunting and fishing and riding motorcycles. Honestly, anything outdoors, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love to do.
Yeah, just Northern California life here.
We have so much stuff to do here.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, That's so fun.
Yeah, it is. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? I film this podcast. This is fun for me. This was like my little dream of being here at the Transformation Center, of having this. And so me and my friends, I'm very Gen Z, and so me and my friends are like, the term right now is yapper. Oh. So if you talk a lot, you're a yapper, and it's kind of funny. And so me and my friends are like, we're level 1 top tier yappers. And so this is the perfect place to be, because I'm like, I just get to talk to people all day, talk about things that's on God's heart. But other than that, I am a grad school student, which seems not fun, but for me is really fun. I'm super nerd studying politics, and which seems like it doesn't fit in here, but it does.
It's amazing.
Because politics are a part of the kingdom.
Yeah, it's true.
It's another episode for another day. But yeah, I'm a student. I love hopping around little coffee houses. It's a good time.
Yeah.
And we have plenty of those.
We do.
Here in Redding, California.
Yeah. In the world. Coffee's really popular. So.
Yeah, it's a good time. But I would love to just jump right in. We talked about something fun. Now we get to talk about something even more fun, which is processing pain. What does that even mean when we say processing pain? What is kind of the importance of that?
Yeah, I think the challenge with humans is we want to avoid pain at all costs, right? Mm-hmm. Pain has a voice, and it says, fix me now. Do whatever you have to do to get rid of me. And so, our first initial response to pain is to run away, is to avoid it, shove it down, stuff it, and pretend like it's not happening. Because I think most people feel powerless to process pain.
Yeah.
We were never taught. The average person wasn't taught how to process pain when they're young. They were taught that life is pain, and you need to avoid it or downplay it. And so I think that's the big challenge for people. Processing pain is literally just the practice of giving yourself enough time to make room to embrace your emotions, really, to feel sad or angry or confused or lonely, and so pain, there's so much variance between what the type of pain that someone can experience, honestly, in everyday life, right? From unfulfilled expectations to somebody actually wrongs you. And so, processing pain looks like embracing the emotion that you're feeling, if it's anger or sadness or grief or sometimes guilt or shame, and actually allowing yourself to cry about it or talk about it, but really to unpack it. I mean, there's lots of different ways to process pain, and I have some of my favorite ways, but really, it's the practice of unpacking what's going on inside of you.
Yeah, that's so good. What are some of your favorite ways to process pain?
Yeah. So I have like a 5-step process for dealing with pain that I think works really well. And so to me, the first step in processing pain is admitting that you're in pain.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, most people don't even know that they're in pain.
Yeah.
They've been in it for so long. So you get really numb to pain, but then you just shut down your emotions.
Yeah.
And so the step 1 is to admit that you're in pain. Step 2 is to pick one thought, one memory, one moment, because you really can't fully process everything at once. And that's kind of a mistake, right? So if you sit down with a friend and they start talking about their whole entire life, my whole life sucks, my whole life's been terrible, it's okay if that's part of their process, but really you have to get to a place where you're processing one thing if you're going to get all the way through it.
Yeah.
Because half processed pain doesn't lead to like a concluded healed moment or memory. And so I like to pick one thing and then to be really honest about it.
Yeah.
That's a big challenge that people have, especially Christians have, is we want to downplay or, I think downplay, but also we're trying to not hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
Even though we're not talking to them, we're just journaling it out. And so, you have to really dive into the pain and remember that when you're processing pain in a healthy, safe way, what you write down is not a commentary on your character. It's a commentary on the pain.
Yeah.
And so
that's good.
Being able to write in a way or express yourself in a way that's honest. Step 3 is all about getting to a place where you start to recognize what the theme is. And so what will happen is, I'll give an example. Like I went through a divorce in 2007 and my wife left me for somebody else. And it wasn't just that my wife left me that created so much pain. There's these underlying things that if we don't actually bring those to God, that continue to drive pain in our lives. And a lot of people say things like, when you talk about what do you do with your pain, a lot of people say like, I nail it to the cross or I give it to God.
Yeah.
But because they don't actually really know a process, they are going to God with their pain and walking back carrying it away.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, you didn't really give it to him. You visited God and then you left the same way.
Yeah.
And so that's why I like this process is, and part of what happens is if you just talk about your pain, well, if you just talk from a place of anger, which is fine, but don't actually get below the anger to what's driving the pain and what's actually driving the anger, then you don't really get a resolve. And so a lot of people say forgiveness is like an onion. You just peel it over and over and over and over again. It's because they're not getting below the anger and to the actual real need. Yeah. And so what will happen is if you start processing pain, let's say that it was the first time that I remembered my wedding day after my wife left me, right? Well, every happy thought that you have, that you build together as a married couple, when a divorce happens, all those happy thoughts turn to pain.
Yeah.
Right? They're all horrible. And so in processing that memory, my first response is, I'm so angry. I have so much judgment. How dare you? How could you?
Yeah.
Why would you? But what's under all that? And so after I cry and I do the, how dare you? How could you? And I get below the pain. What I find is these questions that I really have that honestly only God can answer and or heal. And I'd say this a lot, like even if my ex-wife had come back and apologized, like, I'm so sorry that I left, or I'm so sorry that I did these things.
Yeah.
it wouldn't have given me back what I had lost.
Yeah.
And it's really important because most people, the stuff that they're in pain about, even the person who caused the pain can't solve it.
Yeah.
And so I have to dive, once you start to cry and write, you'll come to a point where all the emotion is kind of gone.
Yeah.
And well, all the heavy emotion's gone. And now you're down to this point where you have to go, okay, you'll start asking these questions like, who's going to love me? Mm-hmm. Or, what do I do about my vows? I didn't actually know. And those things were what were driving the pain.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So step 4 is to bring that to God and get answers for that.
Yeah.
God, what do I do about my vows? Is anyone going to love me again? What do I do about my kids? I can't protect my kids from pain. I can't keep them from this world that I feel so powerless in. And I get promises for those things. God actually meets me and talks to me about those things. Now, from that place, step 5 is I'm going to now forgive.
Yeah.
Which I don't, the first level of forgiveness is a choice. And that's fine. But if you only stay at choice and you don't get to a place of compassion, compassion's what really activates forgiveness.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And so once my needs already been met from God, now I'm at a perfect place to say, God, how do you see the person who's wronged me? And he'll show you this really compassionate picture. From that place, all this stuff that I wrote down in the very beginning, how dare you, how could you, I go back and I forgive for those specific things. And it's just a really, really clean way of methodically processing through pain while embracing your emotions and bringing God into the picture and getting your real needs met.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the practical. And so I say this in probably almost every episode of we have so many things that we talk about in the Christian world, like up here, that are just floating around as ideas of you should process your pain, you should bring it to the Lord. And even with things you were talking about of I gave it to God, I nailed it to the cross. It's like, okay, well, how did you practically do that? Like, how did you see that play out in your life? Because if there's not, I think if we don't have boots on the ground of how did I actually process it, likelihood is we didn't actually process it. That it stayed as a Christianized idea of, oh, I gave it to him, but I have a 600-pound backpack weight that I'm carrying every day, but I thought I gave it to him. And so I love the practical of the 5 steps. Here we are. And I think something that I noticed in every step you talk about was you never stop acknowledging that you're in pain. And it's that God's not afraid of my pain, and that he's not afraid of my big emotions. He's not afraid of that I have a how dare you thought that I could live out through. And something I love that you said was that it's not my actual character, that it's just my pain talking here. And that's okay. And I think we can get afraid of our own pain where we don't actually let it speak. And it can't fully be processed through. And it's almost, there have been moments where in my own life, in the midst of processing pain, where I've felt, oh God, do I need forgiveness for feeling that way? And sometimes there have been things that I've felt really deeply where I'm like, okay, God, I'm sorry that I let my pain cloud my judgment of your character. And even moments where I've had to forgive myself of, I'm sorry that I didn't have enough resources or whatever to protect you from this pain, and allowing the Lord to come in as protector of, he protects from pain. And I tried to be my own protector and it didn't work out so well. And so causing all of these things, but
that's the beauty of processing pain, because if you don't hold it all inside and stuff it, then it doesn't come out in these crazy times, like these unexpected times, right? And it doesn't bleed into your character and shape your character. But because all of us are going to go through pain. So if you have a healthy process of dealing with pain, then you have a way of really unpacking it instead of carrying it, and it becomes a part of your ecosystem.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think in that, a lot of people have allowed it to become a part of their ecosystem and have almost become friends with their pain and have found comfort in it. Can you talk a little bit about how do we begin the process if we've already, we're recognizing, how do we recognize first, I think, that I've become friends with my pain or I've found comfort in being in pain? And if I have, how do I come out of that and almost break up with my pain?
Yeah. I think people who have made pain a friend, the whole ecosystem is tainted with it. And so pain, when you're in pain all the time, it shapes the way that you see the world, right? So you don't develop close friendships with people, or whatever area you're hurt in most. It doesn't have hope, right? It's void of hope. It's void of peace. It's void of joy. It's void of happiness. And so those are the areas that when you make pain your friend forever and a companion, there's depression and anxiety and suffering and hopelessness and torment inside of there. And so it's a very sad place because a lot of people grow up in a home that's very dysregulated and that's full of lots of pain. And so sometimes the fear of, it's like the hell we know is better than the hell we don't know, right? And so people keep pain around because it's familiar and it's actually less scary. So living alone, living isolated, living single, for a lot of people is way less scary than the thought of having a relationship that could possibly go bad and somebody rejecting you. It's like, well, you're already living in a state of pain. The fear of rejection is so much greater than the loneliness that I feel today. And that's making pain your friend is, wow, I'm lonely and I'm sad, but at least I'm not rejected by somebody else. Or I'm financially in crisis, but at least I'm not, out of control in whatever, at least I didn't fail at business. And so we allow fear to take over these places of our life. And so I think when pain is your master, you have fear everywhere. So that would be a good for people to look in at their life and to make an assessment. Is pain running this area of my life? Well, if you have anxiety, depression, hopelessness, and fear, probably so. And so again, how do you break up with that? Well, I think that part of breaking up with fear, it takes a lot of courage. It does. And this is why I think that you have to be in a friend group. This is why I think you need people in your life, because we all have experiences that felt really real to us, that were real. And this is where a testimony comes in. You have a best friend that has a great marriage, and you watch your parents' marriage that was hell, and you go man, I never want to get married. But then you watch the story of somebody else and God's design and allowing someone to speak in that you'll trust more than you trust you is a great way to start that process. And so I think that's where testimonies come in, but also allowing God to speak into those places. Oftentimes we need an expert to help us out. So admitting that you don't know how is a great step. That's where, coming to the Transformation Center, having someone come in and look at why you believe the way that you believe, and bringing Jesus. A sozo can be a great tool for bringing Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit into these places where lies were bound. And then the practical side of getting some coaching or counseling afterwards so that you rebuild your habits and your lenses and the neural pathways in your brain so that you can break the patterns that you used to have.
That's so good. How have you seen processing pain affect family lines and communities and other relationships with people, and even yourself? How did you see, you mentioned you having your divorce, in the midst of processing that, how did you see you processing that for the good and maybe even the hard parts of that affect the people around you?
Oh, I mean, it's a complete game changer, right? Because if you think about it like this, like pain, unprocessed pain is like an infection. Mm-hmm. And so if you go to the doctor and you have a massive infection, mm-hmm. well, what they're going to start to do is they're going to want to drain the infection, right? Like they're going to want to get the infection out of your body, or it will just continue to take over. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, when you start to process pain, you are ridding yourself of this infection that eventually turns into, again, like we talked about, an ecosystem. It turns into your whole entire life. Yeah. It's like a cancer, right? It's like, well, you have the ability to remove and rid yourself of this pain, this cancer that tries to take over. And then, get to a place where it's manageable. And here's the thing, is all of us every single day go through a myriad of emotions. Mm-hmm. We have 8 core emotions that we all experience every single day. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know how to talk about that, process it, then you live a very lonely, isolated life. Yeah. If you know how to process that, the lonely, sad, angry, guilt, mm-hmm. shame, joy, if you know how to process through those, then that just becomes connection. Because human beings don't connect through information. We connect through our emotions. Mm-hmm. And so the gift of processing pain mm-hmm. is connection, ultimately. So I think, it's the husband and wife who go from never really having deep connection to, when you learn how to process pain, mm-hmm. when you learn how to process through your emotions, now we live a connected marriage, because there's so many different places in marriage. I mean, from your sex life is full of fear, it's full of pain, it's mm-hmm. full of shame, and that could be in one night. But being mm-hmm. able to process through that brings you closer, right? It's like, oh, I feel a lot of fear right now. And having your spouse go, oh, tell me about that fear. Or I feel a lot of pain mm-hmm. in this area. Oh, tell me about that. Now it just brings us to a place of real connection, because we're talking about stuff that really matters. And so mm-hmm. learning how to navigate through your emotions, how to process your pain, mm-hmm. how to not stuff it, but talk through it, takes it from being this massive event that's really fearful to like, oh, this is a lifestyle. This is how we do life. We all, I mean, you're going to have a place today where you feel doubt, you feel maybe some conviction or shame, some guilt or mm-hmm. some fear, and being able to work through that with yourself, with God, with a best friend mm-hmm. is part of what makes your life beautiful and connected. Yeah.
In that you mentioned like specifically with the husband and a wife of, oh, you feel fear. Well, tell me about that. How do you think that takes a lot of safety to be like, to even admit to someone else, I feel fear in this area. And then also for someone to come at it with oh, I'm sorry, versus oh, well, tell me about that fear. Can you talk a little bit about how do we cultivate safety within our relationships to even admit, hey, I'm feeling fearful, or hey, I'm feeling a lot of pain right now in this area?
Yeah. Well, for married couples, the goal has to be connection. Yeah. Because if the goal is peace, then we avoid conflict. And as soon as we start avoiding conflict in marriage, that begins the disconnection and the demise ultimately. Yeah. Because a lot of people say, we fell out of love, or we're falling out of love. And you can't fall into love any more than you could fall out of love, because love is not an abstract feeling. Love is a choice. Yeah. And when people say, well, we're falling out of love, what they're really falling out of is connection. We no longer have a strong connection. We don't have a bond. But again, what builds that bond isn't this euphoric chemistry between two people. Yeah. It's intentionality. It's courage. It's being able to talk and share what's really happening, what's going on in life, where you're at. And so if your goal is connection in marriage, and you're really intent on that, then it makes you address the areas of your life that creates disconnection. So if you start thinking about, well, what creates disconnection? What creates disconnection in marriage is everything from selfishness, which would be a self-protection, to unprocessed pain, like we talked about, right? To unhealthy boundaries, not knowing your needs, and so you start to go after those areas. And what we have to understand about our emotions is we all have them whether we want to or not.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to feel sad. I didn't wake up going, man, I want to feel lonely today, or hey, I think I'll add a touch of fear to my life. Yeah. It's just where you're at. And so if my wife tells me today, like yesterday, we were getting ready to do a podcast, and she pulled up to the place where we're going to record, and we both step out, and I see her, and she's crying. My wife didn't want to cry. She didn't wake up that morning going, I think I'm going to cry right before our podcast. Yeah. She was experiencing some pain that was really, really challenging. And so I've got two choices. I can either be a partner and a comfort, or I can be a catalyst to more pain in her life. And her pain may be about me. It may be about our kids. It may be about her mom dying in September, which is that's what it was about, right? She was just waking up feeling some fear that day, and some sadness and loneliness. And it's my privilege to be able to process that with her, because what we have to remember is that our emotions have a life cycle if we process them. So, and we see this in kids the best. Kids are the best at processing pain. Yeah. Because they're not thinking about how it's affecting everyone else. Yeah. And so my little kids, 2 and 4 years old, when they wake up in the morning, you know exactly what they really feel. Yeah. If my daughter feels angry, she's angry. And if I want to help her in the day, I don't tell her, stop being angry. You're a horrible human being for being angry. Yeah. I can actually sit with her and say, hey, babe, what's going on in you? And as she talks about her emotion, I feel sad because Liam took my toy. She starts to go through the process of, honestly, of ridding herself of that actual emotion. And so, oh, I'm so sorry it felt like that. And then we co-regulate, right? She hugs me, I hug her. And now she's experiencing peace where there used to be pain. And before you know it, she's ready to go play with Liam again. Yeah. The guy that she was so angry at a minute ago, they're ready to play again. And he'll do that a million times in the morning. He cries about not having his milk. He cries about being hungry. He cries about not being able to make the food with you. And I used to try to get my kids to be quiet, like, stop yelling, what's wrong with you? Why are you so whiny? You're going to go to your room. Instead, now I talk to them about it. Yeah. Liam, are you sad that you can't cook with me right now? Is the stove really hot? Yeah. Is daddy not want you to touch the stove? Yeah. And then he's coming down. Yeah. Right? Because we're talking about what's going on. And so to me, like, in how you get to a place in marriage where you can create safety is it has to start with you. Yeah. You have to become a safe place yourself. And you have to have a value for emotional health. You have to have value for real connection, and which means addressing your own shame. Yeah. Addressing your own fear. And because I think that it's our ego that keeps us from it, and it's our own shame that keeps us from hearing other people's pain. Yeah. Because the honest truth is, when my wife is in pain and when she's afraid, my temptation is to get her out of pain so that I feel better. Yeah. Not just so that she feels better. Because I'm afraid, or I feel guilt, or I feel shame because she's upset. Instead of going, tell me about that. Yeah. What's going on inside of you? Because often my wife's frustration or pain is me. It doesn't mean that I actually did something wrong. Yeah. It just means that she's experiencing it. Yeah. And so she could say, like, I just have so much fear about our finances, or I have so much fear about our home, or I have so much fear about, and I can go like, oh, our finances are fine, or our home's perfectly great. It's a better home than what I grew up with, Yeah. And really, I'm just experiencing some shame or some guilt or some fear, instead of being in that journey with her and realizing her emotions are a place for for our connection.
Yeah.
That's the value that I hold fast to.
Yeah. And instead of partnering with the shame of that, partnering with compassion to say, I'm not going to try to dismiss your emotions. I want to be here with you. 100%. And I think it's valid both in marriage and in friendships of, like, me and my closest friends, there are times where I'm like, after a long day, because we're all in BSSM, which is a place full of emotions and processing pain, and we'll come home after a long day, and I'm like, the last thing I would like to do is sit and listen to you cry for an hour. But in that, I'm like, I have to choose. I'm going to connect, hey, what's going on? Yeah. Or I could let you run off to your room and I know you're upset and just let you sit by yourself. Or I can say, okay, instead of sitting on social media for 30 minutes or instead of going to bed early like I wanted to, I'm going to choose this connection even though it's uncomfortable for me or it may be inconvenient for me.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like you've said, processing the pain is really unto being able to connect with more people in a better, more healthy way, whether that's in marriage or whether that's with your kids or with your friends. And there have been so many people, anytime we talk about pain or emotions, every time someone brings up their kids, and it's so fun for me because when the Bible talks about us being childlike to enter the kingdom, I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I get to be a kid. So how does a kid respond to this? A kid's going to know you're mad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, how do I be like a kid right now? And we dance around this idea of, I don't want to baby you. But sometimes we need to be babied in order to remember what we're actually feeling and recognize it to then process through it. And it's just all a beautiful process of being able to connect. That if that's our goal, then, and if connection is worth it for us, then anything else in the in-between is also worth doing that.
Yeah, it's true.
And so in that, how have you seen, you've worked with a lot of people over the years, and I would love to hear you talk a little bit about how you've seen pain be processed differently between men and women, because it can be even just within your marriage of like your wife coming to you, maybe a different way than you would go to her with something. How have you seen that play out?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I don't know that I'm fully an expert on this, but I think my wife has more words than I have. And so, she's going to need the process more often than I am and more frequently than me. And I would say just in general, the men in general have less words. Now, there are some men that have more words than their wife.
Yeah.
But in general, my wife wakes up with a list of things that she wants to talk about, a list of things that she wants to process through. Yeah. And I don't. I come home with a couple things, that may have happened that I want to talk about. But my wife, she's going to wake up with some concerns. And part of that is women really carry the load in their home for the different tasks that have to be done, the different things that are of concern, the different threats. Women really carry that load a lot.
Yeah.
And so their need to process through the threats, the potential hazards, even the opportunities, the mental load on a woman is much greater, even statistically, than the mental load on a man.
Yeah.
And so, I think they're much more in tune as well with the kids, what the kids need, all that kind of stuff. So the mental load is much greater. And so I think the women are more apt to need more time and more space to process. In saying that, though, it's not like men don't need to process every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And when I say every day, you don't have to sit down and cry every day or sit down and even, fill up a whole journal. But we all do have these things that we go through on a regular basis, and being able to talk about it, being able to bring it up, that's the healthy part. And so, I don't know beyond that how much we're actually different, but when I look at my life, and even my daughters, they definitely need more time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are going to process more frequently.
Yeah. And even just by process of, when you say process, do you mean like verbally process, like processing out loud, doing kind of things like that, and just being able to take inventory every day of what did I feel? What did I think? When I was in the beginning journey of like learning to acknowledge pain and like work through all the things I'd worked through, I had a wonderful counselor who told me, she was like, every day at the end of the day, I want you to ask these questions to yourself. What were things that made me feel really great today? What were the things that didn't feel so great today? How did I respond? And how would I like to respond in the future to these things? And it changed the game for me and it didn't have to be, some days I said more things, some days I said not as many, and it allowed me to really just take an inventory of, okay, what happened in my day where I didn't snowball into one day being like, everything's wrong, and having to go back and say, oh, if I would have just acknowledged that after it happened, I wouldn't be here 2 weeks later having in my bed crying, not wondering, not knowing what's going on. And so I think all of this is, whether it's men or women, the ability to process pain and do that is so significant in just not having to build it all up and deal with it later. But to say, okay, today, what happened? Nothing super significant. Great. Now I can move on and be able to live a life every day that's unto freedom, not just a moment that's unto freedom. And so I love it. This has been wonderful. It's like, how crazy time flies so fast when you're just talking about something fun. Jason, what would be like a walk-off statement of, if you could leave our listeners with one thing today, what would that be?
I think we are all designed to live a deep, connected life, and we're not designed to live a pain-free life. But I think being able to be powerful in your world, regardless of what happens, the experiences and the emotions that you're feeling, it's so important. And so I really do. I think that people have the opportunity to break old patterns and cycles, generational curses, by changing what they do with what they're experiencing every single day. And so to me, it's like, take steps towards freedom today. Take steps towards empowerment. Take steps towards really loving your life, which doesn't mean eradicating the emotion from your life. It means learning how to embrace it and use it as a place of connection. So that's what I'd say to people.
That's beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Jason, for being here today.
Thank you so much.
This has been great. I love that we get to talk about these things now, because when I was first walking in the church when I got saved at 16, nobody talked about pain and nobody talked about emotions. And so this is just wonderful for me. If you need any help or support, or you would like to book a sozo or counseling or coaching session, or if you just need somebody to say, hey, I'm feeling something, can you help? We would love to be that resource for you, and you can connect with us through our website at tcbethel.com, and you can click the little Start Here button in the top right corner. It's pink and beautiful, and we would love to get connected in order to help you reach greater freedom in your life, help you process pain, help you have greater connections. And so if you need help, we'd love to support you. And until next time, we'll see you later.